I would first like to thank Jerry Derr and the entire Sergeant Colton Levi Derr Foundation staff for hosting this event once again and inviting me to speak in front of each of you tonight. It is an honor to be here, and as I prepared for this evening, I recalled a quote which I feel is inexplicably fitting for tonight's topic. It reads, "Only the dead have seen the end of war." Plato. In a sense, the war Colton and many others have waged is now over. Yet while the end of any other war may sometimes represent solace, we must recognize the war we discuss this evening represents the anguish and burden of an incomprehensible struggle. With that said, there is a battle that we must carry on in their names. For many of us, that battle began more than a decade ago during a time when the very substance of this country was challenged by terrorism on our own soil. We witnessed the country become united. We witnessed young men and women willingly volunteer to serve their country. And we witnessed some of those same service members give their lives for a cause greater than their own. In that time, the mission was direct. We all thought we knew what we were entering into, and we each eagerly awaited our opportunity. I can personally recall sitting in the chow hall during my time at the School of Infantry, training as an infantry machine gunner, intently watching the news as units went house to house fighting in Fallujah. It was an experience which only further fueled the fire of commitment and duty to serve. Yet the thought of stepping onto the battlefield was still surreal. I will never forget being grouped into the operational units we would be assigned to at the culmination of our initial training. Our company first sergeant would ask, "Who is being stationed at 29 Palms Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center? Who is going to 3-7? Who is going to 3-4? You gentlemen are deploying to Iraq in 2 weeks." Reality had begun to set in. I would soon arrive at my unit, one that was already battle-hardened by 2 combat tours, which included the initial invasion of Iraq. Every man carried himself with an aura that is still beyond words to me to this day. The coming months of preparation would seemingly shed light on their experiences, as training evolutions were harsh and unforgiving. We would deploy not once, but twice to the city of Ramadi in less than 2 years. In that time, many of us would develop an intimacy with the atrocities of war, becoming desensitized to who we once were. We would enter into a perpetual state of suffering that would prepare us to set foot on the battlefield time and time again. However, we would develop a bond with our brothers and sisters that would provide a sense of comfort and healing. Not surprisingly, the phrases PTSD and suicide awareness were obscure terms, merely associated with weakness and the lack of will to commit to the cause during a time of war. Unfortunately, I would carry this sentiment with me. Until the names of those I served with slowly began resonating with the cause we are gathered here for tonight. As war remained constant, these terms became more prevalent. Mandatory training concerning this very topic became part of the preparation for deployment, and counseling was and still is offered. Yet the subject was merely a laughable matter, and the notion of death, whether at the hands of our own or at the hands of our enemy, was a seemingly impossible feat, for we thought we were invincible. After all, we had been trained to fight, to compartmentalize our thoughts and feelings, and to execute the mission without hesitation or fear. Yet, what we have collectively failed to realize, regardless of branch of service, regardless of the medals we wear on our chest, and regardless of the experiences and hardships we may have faced, is the absence of commitment we would find away from our units and our brothers. For some of us, we first felt that absence of commitment on Weekend Liberty. For others, it was felt during their post and pre-deployment lead block. And for some, it was felt after our tour of duty had all but ended. You see, each of us have faithfully devoted our lives to serving a cause. We belong to a brotherhood where the bonds were deeper, the loss is greater, and the chaos constant. In the absence of this beautiful disarray, many of us enter into a search for a meaningful purpose that rivals the loyalty of that very brotherhood, and we yearn for the same devotion in return. For many, that void is filled by family, friends, and loved ones, the pursuit of education and professional experience, the fellowship of a church and God's calling, or simply the presence of those willing to listen. But that void is not filled for everyone. If we want to end the incomprehensible number that vaguely quantifies the loss of life, we must again show our commitment. We must become the brother and sister service members have entrusted their lives with. We must develop an understanding of the drive and purpose our service members are capable of, and we must hear the stories these men and women should tell. For these stories are the substance of our country and a vertebrae in the backbone of our history. We must do these things because, as the author and political theorist Edmund Burke once said, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Thank you.
So if you would have asked me 16 years ago, or even longer as a child, what I wanted to do when I grow up, you would have heard an answer such as a rock star or a teacher. But never in a million years would you have heard that I want to be a United States Airman. See, for me, growing up, I was that girly girl. Glitters, sparkle, the dresses that when you went in circles and you twirled around, they would come up really high. That was me. Not the dirt, not the ground, definitely not sleeping in a tent. But that's what I got. 16 years in the active duty Air Force. I'm in a male-dominated career field as a vehicle operator. And I've seen things that most people where I grew up have not seen. However, I've taken this opportunity and I've thrived. I've seen things such as receiving a top secret clearance, working on a nuclear platform. God only hopes that we never have to use that. I've been on those detainee ops where I was working with the Army Special Forces, where they would go in, they would take out the detainee, and I would escort them back for interrogation. Who can say that they've done that? Then I've also been able to go out and be that convoy commander, where I had 48 individuals under my command. I was responsible for them not only getting out to take care of the mission, but to be able to get them home. And let me tell you, to be able to see those 48 individuals get on a plane with all their fingers, toes, and most of their insanity intact, to make sure that they got back to their families, was the proudest moment in my Air Force career. However, let me tell you, this these accomplishments don't come with some type of risk. There's a misunderstanding about what depression and what it looks like. For many people, depression may look like an individual who crawls up in a ball, cries themselves to sleep, stays in their pajamas all day long. However, there's something else, and it looks like this. It's a wife, it's a mom, it's a dog owner, it's a sister, it's a friend, it's a granddaughter, it's an owner of a Jeep Grand Cherokee. I know it's not special, but you know. And it's a homeowner with food in the pantry and no necessary worries. Depression looks like me. I suffered for many years in silence because I didn't want my family, my peers, my supervisors, my commanders, my friends to see that I was anything but that stellar, hardworking, go-to, lovable person that I've been known to be. How could I be all of that, yet still broken? I was embarrassed, and I let my ego get in the way. I was living two lives. I was living the life that most people would see on the outside. The one that was full of smiles and laughter. The ones that were inviting people over for holiday meals. Baking goods for bringing the baked goods in for work. Making those sacrifices to stay at work late, to make sure that the mission was getting done, so that others could go home to their families. I wanted to be that go-to individual. However, on the other side, when it was just me, and looking in the mirror, all alone, I had many thoughts going through my head. I would see nothing but pain, and sometimes I would feel nothing. I felt worthless. I became so numb to the feeling of depression that I lived with it day in and day out, thinking to myself that one day this is going to pass. This is not who I am. However, depression is not like a common cold or the flu. It's not a disease that you can fight off like the chicken pox. It's something that you have to live with every day. It doesn't wash off like the sweat from a hard workout or the dirt after a hard day of work on your hands. There's a stigma that people have that have to fight day in and day out. Depression, anxiety, PT. It's hard to understand for most people. It's not the wounds that you see with a missing limb or a broken arm in a cast or a cut with those stitches. It's something that's invisible and most people don't understand. After I fought against the stigma and I asked for that help, I took that step and I received it. That worthless feeling started to get less and less as the days went on. And I started to feel more like myself, happy again. I was like that little girl that would spin around in those dresses and those skirts. I still live with the issues today. However, as each day goes on, I learn what my new normal is. And I love it, and I embrace it. I was given the opportunity a couple years ago to join a team of 5 in the Air Force, that we stepped out of my vehicle operations career fields, and I became an Air Force resilience instructor. As an instructor, I would teach up to 3,000 students in that time frame, and we would talk about life skills, coping mechanisms, to help individuals get through these challenging times. Because believe it or not, the Air Force as well goes out and does things out of the norm. We don't all fly, as many people think. This is where I found a new passion, a passion to help people, to make sure that they understood that people are there for them, that you don't have to suffer in silence, that there are people there that are willing to listen and to give you those coping mechanisms and skills. This is also what pushed me to receive my bachelor's in psychology with a minor in counseling, because I want to give back to those that have given to me. So I want to just leave you with this note. As I look around this room tonight, I see many people, and I know that there may be people in here that may have the same feelings that I did at once, that they feel alone, that nobody would understand their story or their thoughts, that someone in this room will put that smile on every day and pretend that everything is okay, while in public, however in private, are suffering. Please know that you are not alone, people care, and most important, you are worth it. I challenge you to recognize the hardships and to seek out the assistance and the help that is afforded to you. There's a whole community out there, and we all have your six. Please don't suffer in silence.